The Central Criminal Court has heard from a fingerprint and DNA expert in the ongoing trial of Jozef Puska, who denies the murder of teacher Ashling Murphy in Tullamore in January of 2022. But first, let's hear what an interpreter told the court. And watching for us, Frank Rainey. Morning, Frank. Talk to us about the evidence given by Miroslav Sedlacek.
Well, he said that he translated two conversations between Jozef Puska and some of the Garda investigating Ashling's murder. And this was on the 14th of January last year, so that would have been 2 days after Ashling was killed along the banks of the Grand Canal in Tullamore. And on both occasions he said that he was put on loudspeaker so that he could translate over the phone. The first call, he said, was in the afternoon. He knew the exact time by looking at his call records. It was 21 minutes past 12. It lasted 44 minutes. And that conversation related to Jozef Puska's claim that he had been attacked and stabbed in Blanchardstown 2 days beforehand. That would have been the same day that he is alleged to have murdered Ashling Murphy. And during that conversation, Mr. Sedlacek said that there was a conversation about a bicycle. He was asked by the prosecuting barrister, Ms. Anne-Marie Lawler, if Mr. Puska was speaking freely during this conversation in the afternoon. Mr. Puska was in St. James's Hospital in Dublin at this point, and he said yes, that he was speaking freely, and also sometimes he said that he was talking quickly. So he said he had to stop from time to time to be able to translate what he was saying for the Gardai. He was then asked about the evening phone call. This was the second phone call of the day. At 20 past 6 in the evening, it lasted 23 minutes. And during the course of that conversation, the interpreter said that a search warrant that had been executed on the hospital was explained to Mr. Puska. He was told that it related to his personal belongings, that they had to be seized for a criminal investigation. He said that Mr. Puska wanted to know why. He was told it was an investigation in relation to a murder in Tullamore. He said that the Garda also asked Jozef at that point if he had any information whatsoever about that murder in Tullamore. And he said that Jozef told the Garda that he knew something from the internet, but not too much. At that point then he said that Mr. Puska wanted to know if he was a suspect, so the Garda explained through him, the interpreter, that he was not a suspect, but that he is a person of interest. And at that point the interpreter said Jozef then asked him personally to translate his confession. He asked him to translate it accurately, exactly, word for word. He said it was quite spontaneous, that everything came quickly, and he said that Mr. Puska wanted him to tell the guards that he did it, that he killed her, but that he didn't do it intentionally. And he said he didn't want to do it and that he was very sorry that he had done it. The Gardaí then, according to the interpreter, cautioned Mr. Puska. He was asked if Mr. Puska understood that caution. He said that he did. And he said that Mr. Puska then wanted to ask some questions of the Gardaí, specifically in relation to the well-being of his family. He asked if there was any possibility that the girl's family would like to take revenge on his own family for what he had done. And the translator said that his voice changed significantly during this evening conversation. He said it was very different to the earlier conversation. Again, he was translating on loudspeaker. After Mr. Puska made this confession, the interpreter said that he was quite emotional. His voice was trembling. His sentences were already disjointed, he said. And he said he supposed it was as a result of the situation that he was in. He described him as being in very low spirits. Even desperate was how he said to the jury yesterday after he had made this confession. He said that the Garda explained to him that there wouldn't be any problem, that there wouldn't be any dispute between the two families, that her family would certainly not take revenge on his, that no such threat existed. And at that point in the conversation, he said that the Garda told him that Jozef wasn't feeling very well, so that they would have to end the call at that point. And before that, he said that Jozef asked the Gardaí what happens next, and he was told that when he recovers fully, he would be brought to Tullamore Garda Station to be interviewed.
All right, let's move on then to the more forensic evidence that was heard yesterday.
Yeah, a lot of forensic evidence presented to the jurors yesterday afternoon. The jurors heard from a fingerprints expert called Dr. Kim Connick. She was asked to examine 3 items: a navy Zara raincoat, She said it was fleece-lined and rubberised. She was also asked to take a look at some Ray-Ban sunglasses and an adult's Falcon Storm mountain bike, which was missing its handlebar grips. In relation to the jacket, she said she found no marks on that. She was also unable to develop any finger or palm marks from the sunglasses, but she said she did find something on the saddle of the bike using fingerprint powder, and she said she developed that mark from the underside of the bike's saddle towards the back of it on its underside. She said she took a photograph of it. She was cross-examined about that examination. She said, and she accepted, that it wasn't unusual to find a fingerprint there because most people lift their bike by holding the bottom of the saddle. She then passed on her findings to another fingerprints expert who the jury heard from yesterday, a Detective Sergeant Damien Carroll from the Garda Technical Bureau. He's over 20 years' experience identifying persons through finger and palm prints, and he began by giving the jury a crash course on how it all works. And he then told them that he received 2 sets of prints belonging to Mr. Puska. That was on the 18th of January last year. They were taken in Tullamore Garda station, and he was asked why he requested a second set. And he said it was because the first one was incomplete in the area that he needed to look at from a comparison point of view. An enlarged photo of the mark was produced and shown to the jury. Detective Sergeant Carroll then explained how, through his examination, he was left in no doubt that the mark found under the saddle of that bike belonged to Jozef Puska's right ring finger. The jurors also heard yesterday from a DNA expert, John Hode, who was recently retired, but back in January of last year he was working with Forensic Science Ireland, and he said he took swabs, both wet and dry swabs, from the handlebars of that bike and from its gear-changing mechanism, and he said that he was able to develop a DNA profile from that. He said he also received a blood sample taken from Mr. Puska at St. James's Hospital, as well as a sample taken from him at Tullamore Garda station after he was arrested. So 3 DNA profiles in total for him to work with. He said he compared all 3. He said all 3 matched each other, and he said that the likelihood of the DNA found on the bike belonging to somebody other than Mr. Puska was over 1 in a billion.
We also heard yesterday of an ID parade that was carried out.
That's right, and the jury has already heard a little bit of evidence about this ID parade, but they heard some more yesterday from a Detective Sergeant William Delaney from Portlaoise Garda station. The jury heard about the ID parade initially from a civilian witness called Jenna Stack, who gave evidence earlier in the trial. She, you may remember, gave the Garda a description of a man she claimed to have seen holding a girl down in a hedgerow along the Grand Canal while she was out for a run that afternoon. On the back of that, then, a man was asked to take part in an ID parade the following day. We heard from Detective Sergeant Delaney yesterday that his solicitor attended that ID parade too, just to make sure, I suppose, everything was all above board. That man, the man that took part in the ID parade, whose solicitor accompanied him that day, has been named previously during the trial. He was named again yesterday, but I don't think there's any need to repeat his name on air here this morning. Safe to say that it was not Jozef Puska. And in relation to the parade, Detective Sergeant Delaney said he took a good look at this man before going out to find people who resembled him. Foils is how he described them, and from 20 volunteers that he sourced, he said he whittled the lineup down to 9, so that was the man and 8 of these so-called foils. The jury was told they were not all ethnically similar, that some were Irish, and Detective Sergeant Delaney then said that Ms. Stack picked the man out, suspect number 6. A photograph of this man and of the 8 other foils was then shown to the jury, and again, just to reiterate, that man was not Jozef Puska.